Only you. This is your one life, your one chance. People are going to talk about you anyway. You might as well live the life that you want to live.
Welcome to Bigger Than the Hustle podcast, where I bring you real conversations with entrepreneurs on how they live their lives outside their business. Every week, we deep dive into the energies, the motivations, disciplines, the habits, and the mindsets that make them successful in their life, which allows them to be successful in their business. Now, today, I've got a guest with me, Steph. Now, we have a very similar outlook in the way we speak to each other and the way she sees life and the way I do, and I'm sure she's got a really interesting story on how she got to where she is today. So I'm not really going to go into too much because I'll let her speak about that. So without further ado, hi, Steph.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. So if I'm going to hand the mic over to you, if you could just give a little brief insight into you and what you're about, and then we can start the conversation from there.
Yeah, perfect. So my name is Steph. I'm a business and success coach, and I work with ambitious, heart-led female entrepreneurs to build a business and life that they love. So very much in tune with what you were saying, and I'm also the founder of the Extraordinary Business Evolution. So the thinking behind that is about really tuning into what's in your heart and leading from that place to build a business and life you love.
Perfect. Now, one key word that stood out to me when you just introduced yourself, it was female. Okay, so I'm presuming you focus more with females.
I do.
What is the reason for that? Why did you decide to do it that way?
When back in November, when I was deciding which direction to go with my business, I really spent a lot of time listening to my heart, which is what I teach my clients to do. Mm-hmm. And for me, women face a particular set of challenges. And as a mum with a young family, a lot of my friends are in similar situations where we're putting a lot of our dreams and ambitions on the back burner because we have got young families. And I also home educate my children all of the time, not just during lockdown. So it was really important to me to support women so that they could see that they could be the mum and partner that they wanted to be, and they could follow their dreams and ambitions. Because I know for myself, for a long time, I thought it was either or. I didn't think I could do both. So that was a really important part of why I decided to start working with women.
Perfect. Now, I resonate with that wholly because my wife was in a similar position, like you said. So when we had our first child, which was 14 years ago, she was corporate. I've always sort of had my own business. So she was corporate and she was working away from Leicester in Derby. And then as soon as she became pregnant, we decided that obviously we had Kaya, and then she found it hard to balance the work and the home life in terms of running about and things like this. So we decided that, she wanted to take time off, raise our daughter. Obviously, the first 5 years is the formative years we find for raising kids. Then she decided to sort of step into sort of fitness and nutrition, things like this, because that's what interested her. And I think being around an energy, so I've had my own business for a long time. Being around that energy, it sort of makes it possible because you see other people around you doing it, right? So what gave you the energy to step into your own sort of journey and your own discipline to set up what you have today?
Well, it's a good question, actually. When we were chatting before, I was thinking here, where has this come from? So my dad, he's a self-employed electrician, so he's always worked for himself. Yeah. And I think even from a really young age, we're from a working class background. I was the first person in my family to go to university. So I've always been quite motivated by money because I saw the freedom that it gave you. And I think when you've come from a background where you haven't had a lot of money, you can see that if you had more money, it doesn't answer everything, but it does make things easier. So even when I was like younger, I would do like little things like sell my books or have a little sweet stall. And then as I got older, I did things like I had a market stall selling vitamins. So little things. When I was thinking back, I was like, actually, I think the signs were already there. But because I was the first person to go to university, I was very focused on a professional career. That's what I was going to be doing. So I never considered. It wasn't a consideration to set up my own business at that point. I hadn't even thought about it, and very much went down the career route. So, but then having children, that was the biggest catalyst, really. I enjoyed my job and I'd done really well at it. but it was quite clear that going back part-time, it just didn't work. So I'd had a Hypno Birth, which is where you do birthing using hypnotherapy, with my first child. And prior to that, I'd been terrified of giving birth, and I'd had the most amazing birth. And it was actually my husband who said, why don't you train as a teacher? And I was like, oh yeah, actually, I love it so much. I was telling everybody I was so passionate about it. So that was the start of the journey, was then thinking, right, well, if I train as a hypnobirthing teacher, then I could set up my business and, leave employment behind. So that was the very beginning part.
Perfect. Now, moving sort of forward from there, so you're using your own life to say, what are the things that have helped me, or what are the struggles that I've had, to try and solve the solution, or try and allow other people to access the same, benefits and pleasures you've had based on the decisions you've made, right? Mm-hmm. Having your dad as a self-employed electrician, like you mentioned, so you've always seen him, the hard work that it takes to run a business, and the discipline and the customer service, telling people when you say you're going to be there, be there. When you say you can do something, do it. Those kind of things you obviously saw. It's like my dad was self-employed his whole life, really. And being around that, we never really saw him because he was always sort of working.
Yeah.
Which is not great. And that's a decision I made to try and change that, to try and be more involved with my kids, even though probably I fell down quite a lot of times. I'm still moving on that journey. Now, how do you balance the sort of the mum and the businesswoman to be sort of that fusion part in the middle?
Good question. I talk to my ladies about this a lot, and there is no perfect place to build a business. And even even if we didn't have children, even if we were on our own, then we would still have challenges and different things pulling on our time. Yep. So I really encourage people to see that this actually can be a benefit. Like, having the children is a real motivating factor for me. Yep. And it's just a constant communication juggling. As I say, the biggest barrier for me was the mental barrier. So I really had to, even in January, that was a massive hurdle for me, because I was really holding myself back, because I didn't think I could be the mum I wanted to be and run a successful business. And I just had to trust. I just had to trust and believe that I could do it. And I think constant communication between myself and my husband and our children, we're very, we have family meetings and we talk about a lot of stuff. So just having that communication and really being structured with our time. So making sure, I know that if I have, I've been working all day today, if I then worked all day tomorrow, I personally would find that really quite difficult. So making sure that I structure my week so that we do have that connection time in blocks. And it's just a work in progress. Nothing's perfect. And I think sometimes it doesn't work, then we review it and we look at what hasn't worked, and then we go again. And it's just like constant reevaluation, which I'm sure you'll probably be used to as well.
It's the difficulty, I think, because I've never worked at home. Mine is retail based, so I have a shop, I have sort of other premises and an office and things like this, right? So because since lockdown, and obviously we're in Leicester, so we're still in lockdown, so it's quite a strange situation for us. The initial part was really quite tough in terms of moving sort of retail to home. And then I've always wanted to do it more, because I'd wanted to be a part of my kids' lives a bit more. But I found that quite hard initially, to try and balance that, seeing all the things that you see at home. Because when I leave the house, you leave, don't you? When you're in an office, you don't see anymore, and then you come back and then you have those things to deal with. My wife, because she works from home, she sort of balances it better. But having the kids as well, like you said, you homeschool, right? Wow, that already says to me that you've got a lot about you, that you choose to homeschool as well. So where did that come?
Crazy.
Where's the energy of that come from? Because that's quite interesting.
Well, I love talking about this, because when I'm speaking to people who are starting out on business, or they're just starting to work with me, I always say to them, what does your dream life look like? So let's start at the big issue. Let's think massive. What does it look like? And when I first had children, and I must say as well, before I had the children, I was a real city party girl. The opening of anything, I was there. Like, that was my life, and I loved it. And I didn't even know if I wanted children, but I met my husband, and he was like, early conversations, do you want children? I was like, to be honest, I don't know if I do. So if you do really want them, you probably do need to go and find somebody else, because I'm not sure that is my path. And he was just like, no, I love you. We're going to stay together and see. And then I guess I just kind of was thinking, well, am I saying I definitely don't want them? I was like, well, I don't know if I'm definitely saying. I was 30 at the time, which felt really old, and I felt I had to make this big decision. Which obviously in hindsight, I'm like, God, I really could have left it a bit longer. But anyway, I was like, do you know what? We're just going to do it. So that was the decision. It wasn't like I had this burning desire and I was this Mother Earth type of person. But falling pregnant was really a pivotal part for me, because I'd had a very difficult relationship with my body growing up. And all of a sudden, it opened me up to the miracle of life. And I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but it really did. I just had this thing of like, wow, I'm growing a baby, and how does that happen? And before that, I'd been very, I wasn't religious, and I was very much a when you die, you're dead kind of person. Yeah. But this miracle just really changed me. And then going through the process of pregnancy and then labor and then actually having my child as well. So it started that process of really questioning like what life was all about and what are we here for. And I just really wanted to ensure that they had a really, not necessarily protected, but the chance to grow into the people they were meant to be without influence, which looking back, I really felt that school really impacted me, not necessarily in a positive way. So that's where the idea of home education, we kind of do respectful parenting and something called radical unschooling. So it kind of all came together, which is very much about seeing children as people. Yeah. And letting them have the autonomy to make their own decisions and do what they want to do. So that was where it came from.
And you, obviously, when you were being raised or when you were a child and you're coming up, like you said, through the schooling system, maybe it wasn't right for you. And there's obviously certain things that have happened to put your kids into a different route and use that learning. And also your parents. So, we have parents and we are parents now as well. And there's so much that I've gained so much learning from my dad and mum, both of them. But there's so many subconscious biases that they've put into us that I realize now that at the time it meant well, but now they don't serve me anymore. So there's so much unlearning that I've had to do through my life to say, actually, I take these and I use them, which I use them well, and those things I choose not to take anymore, and I try and move my forward. It doesn't mean I'm perfect, it just means I'm consciously aware and I'm changing that. What processes of unlearning have you been through to create the person that you are today?
Oh, so many. So I think part of that process of the parenting was when I started to kind of see, like you say, that our parents pass on that unconscious bias to us. And when I started unraveling all that kind of made me see, and then the schooling system, look at the fact that we absorb these stories that become our own, but actually serve us to a point, but then no longer. Yeah. So hypnotherapy was really powerful for me. I've also done a lot around somatic healing, so really connecting with my body and making my body feel like a safe place, because I truly believe that most adults, particularly in the Western world, are living in a constant state of low-level anxiety. And when we're in that state of anxiety and our nervous system is activated into the stress levels, then we are not making decisions that we would if we were calm and in our parasympathetic nervous system. So working with the body is really important to me, and doing things like yoga, breath work, I like cold showers, all those kind of things to really heal and repair your nervous system have definitely made a big difference to me. And then, as you mentioned, the subconscious work as well.
Yeah. And from some things you mentioned there, I think it's being in touch with that side of our system, isn't it? So rather than letting the environment and the information that hits us all day and all night dictate how we move, it's going quiet, isn't it? It's quieting down the noise that's around us and saying, actually, what serves me and what doesn't serve me. And you can only do that when you're quiet. You can only do that when you go within, right? and know what's good for you. Everyone might say, I'm running business, so I have to be on social media all day and post all day. And for me, it's never been like that, because it's a case of actually business is about serving people. And if you serve people well, people will keep coming, because that's the energy you're putting out into the universe, right? And social media can be a tool, and I use it as a tool, but it's not the reason or the purpose I live. And I don't use that as my bar of whether I'm doing well or I'm not doing well. I use my own, judgment of myself. So what advice could you give, especially to females out there, where so much information of judgment, there's so much information of someone being better than someone else, and how we should live our lives, the word should. How to drown that out and really live your true purpose and live your truth.
I think the starting point is really, as you've said, connection. And the phrase I use a lot is connection is currency. And that doesn't necessarily mean money-wise, but it is the currency of how you live your life and how you connect with other people. So connection to yourself and to others. But until you know yourself, it's really difficult, I think, to create a life that you love. And I was just chatting to some people in my group this morning. I've been to the hairdressers, so you've got my nice hair today.
Nice.
But a few years ago, it was sitting and looking in the mirror for an hour or 2 hours was really uncomfortable for me. I found that really challenging. And going today and just reflecting on that and thinking, actually, this is just easy. And the same for a massage. I used to really struggle with having that quiet time. And I think we're all so busy, and I know myself, I used a lot of things to numb out my feelings and not have to face up to things that I didn't want to. So I would have 100% have said I was happy, 8 years ago, or maybe a bit longer, 9 years ago. But I deeply was unhappy, but I didn't realize it because I was busy going out and going out drinking and seeing my friends, and I was very busy. And on paper, I was living the life, but deep down inside, when I look back, I wasn't very happy. So just building that connection with yourself, and then from there thinking, well, what do I want out of life? I know that before I was even scared to think of what I wanted, because I felt like it was too unattainable. So if I didn't dream about it, I couldn't be disappointed. So I just carried on and on and on until really, probably about 18 months, 2 years ago, I got to a breaking point where I really wasn't very well. And that's when I started learning all this stuff and really looking into it and working out how I could heal myself from the inside out.
And one thing that resonated with me quite deeply, something you just mentioned there, was you have to consciously be aware of what you want your life to be, not just what you don't want your life to be. Because I think a lot of people live in that, don't they? I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, rather than saying, I want this, I want this, I want this. I think it's the fierce part of our brain that keeps us in that comfort zone. So actually, I don't want all these things because I don't know how they'll work, or I don't feel. Rather than saying that, it's like, let me step into the unknown and say, this is what I want. And what choices and what decisions do I need to make today to start moving in that direction, right? Because it's not going to happen straight away. There are lots of changes that need to happen. And when I look back in 5 years' time or in 10 years' time, whatever that time scale is, I can look back on today and say that's the best decision I made because it allowed me to live the life that I have today, right? And it's like, I don't know if you reach this point, but I reached a crisis point where I was broken. The mask and veneer was a wonderful life, but behind that was broken. And it took a lot of, self-learning, self-development, going quiet, etc. So do you think it always would take a crisis before it reaches that point? Or do you think that can happen consciously before you get to that point?
It's a really good question. Part of my mission is to support women to wake up to this conscious choice before they get to breaking point, because I don't really want anyone to have to go through what I went through, and I do think it is absolutely possible to do that and make the changes. But also, I think you have to make your success non-negotiable. Like, you have to absolutely choose it time and time again. Now, for some people, it will take that rock bottom to propel them upwards, and then for other people, it will just click into place, and then they'll be like, yeah, I get it. Right. Okay. Now I need to choose. And I say to people, you don't choose once, you choose, thousands of times a day, every single decision. Does this decision support my long-term goal? If it doesn't, drop it to one side. And you do that time and time and time again. I hear a lot of people talking about, one day I'll do that, or I'd love to be able to do that. It's like, it isn't going to happen if you don't actively work out what needs to happen and then work backwards. So I'm all about reverse engineering, because that's worked so well in our lives. And we've mentioned about the home education. My husband and I have both set up our businesses so that we can travel with them. That's like our long-term plan.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
So, but we couldn't, we could have always said, oh, well, that's something we want to do one day. But in order to do it, we both needed to have businesses that were location independent. So, then you're like, right, how do we do that? And then you work back from there. So that's definitely helped us.
And do you find, you just mentioned your husband there having his own business, and obviously you do as well. Do you find it that the conversations flow so much easier and you get each other because you do have your own business? If someone's working corporate, I remember when my wife was working corporate when she was at home, and I've always had my own business. She found it tough sometimes, some of the decisions I had to make, like we couldn't go to certain things because I had to do certain things. Or if we went on holiday, I'd switch the laptop on for 2 hours just to catch up on stuff. And then I'd felt comfortable that I can spend the rest of the day doing what I want to do. And she found that quite alien, because she's like, can't you just take a week off without thinking about it, And I said, but it's hard, because I was the linchpin. My business was never set up where other people could manage and run it. A lot of it relied on me. And since she's had her own business for the last 8 years, she gets it. So now it's like, if we're at home, she'll be like, okay, 2 hours you go, just do your thing, I'll look after here. Then we swap and we balance. And it's nice to have that balance, because it makes it easier, doesn't it? Because we don't have to explain certain things, because we both get it now, right? So that balance between you and your husband, right? So here's a little bit of a curveball for you. You predominantly deal with females, right? As a male, what challenge do you think we have, and how do you think we deal with it differently to how females deal with it?
Oh, that is a good question. I think, so, when I was making my decision, I could see, the work that I could do could certainly help men. I personally think that I get women better and work better with them. For men, I think men at the moment are in a really difficult position. I think I mentioned that we had like a crisis point about 2 years ago, and my husband had so historically I've been the main breadwinner, and then as my husband and I got together and then we had the children, he obviously stepped into that role, and he had built a really successful career. So he was earning 6 figures, he was traveling all over the country, but we were both deeply unhappy. Like you said, on paper we had the money, we had the house, but we were not happy at all. We were both feeling really unwell, and it was stressful, the kids weren't happy. So but he had that really strong provider thing that I think a lot of guys do. Yeah. And I think it's really difficult for men in the present moment, because he was like, well, I just need to keep working and I need to keep providing. And I was like, well, you're really not feeling very well and it's stressful. I'm not coping very well. The kids are like, something needs to change. But for him to step into that unknown, he's just like, well, I just need to keep providing the money and I'm not really bothered about my health, because as long as you guys are okay. And I'm like, but no, that's not the life. That doesn't work. I don't want him working until he's like 65 and then having a heart attack. That is not the life that I wanted us to have. So that was really hard for him, really hard. And I think a lot of men, the traditional role is different now, and what women want is a partnership. And I think if men are very you're still stuck in the olden ways, I think that's where I see a lot of friction. And I know in our relationship, where because my husband was working all the time, I was happy to take on the household role, but then you can't do everything yourself, and then it's like, well, is that fulfilling for me? That wasn't what I wanted to be doing all the time. So as you mentioned, now we do have a really good balance, and we share the childcare. We both do things around the home. We're just getting a cleaner in to help us, which is going to be amazing. We need a bit of help. But things feel a lot more equal. And I think for men, it's just really hard. It is really hard for them, and it's hard times, particularly with everything that we've gone through during lockdown. They're not used to most likely being at home this whole time. So trying to work and then with the kids. And I know myself, I was in a real flow with my children. We've obviously a bit different to other people's setups, but when my husband was away and working all the time, we just got into our own thing. And then I think when he came in, it probably felt a bit lonely because he was coming to home, and yet we had our own little unit, and then he was coming because he was out all the time. So I do think, is that something that you resonate with when you were away working?
Yeah, so it's like I said, I was seen as the fun area, right? So I'd come home and I only had a little bit of time with them, so we do sort of like some fun things on the weekends. We do sort of fun things, and Mum was the disciplinary, the one that makes them do things they didn't want to do and stuff. So it was good in that respect. But bonding with them over the last 3 or 4 months, it's been awesome. Like learning about them as individuals, listening to them, watching their actions and seeing how they respond to certain things, which I've never had time to do. I've never been around to do because I've been working quite a lot. Now, seeing that is like, yes, like for example, this last few nights we've been watching MasterChef together. So me and the 2 kids, and we'll all sit there, we'll get a little dessert, and then we'll just sit and watch like 2 episodes match, and we'll all have our own comments and things like that. And that's just things we do together. Like my wife generally does evening classes, so she's sort of not around, and it's really nice to just sit with them as an adult and not feel like I have to be a dad, and it's funny, that fatherly or motherly role. I've never felt like when I look at a dad, I look at my dad and I say, that's what I call a dad. Do you know what I mean? Like the responsible one, and doesn't go out to party, he just comes home, does the gardening.
Adults.
yeah. Whereas I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to see the boys. We're out for the weekend, and we'll be back again over the weekend, and then and it's nice that now my kids are a little older. I don't have to feel like I have to be the dad. We feel more on a par, and I've always felt more comfortable in that situation. But they'll still listen when it's time to listen, but a lot of the time I listen to them because there's so much that they'll tell me, Dad, don't do that, that's not great, whatever. And I'm like, all right, I'm the dad. And I like it that I don't feel like I have to feel that that whole the authority. I have to be the authority, because I don't think that works well with me. It's not me as a person. So talking about marriage, before you and your husband got married, if there's other people that are listening right now that are thinking of stepping into a long-term relationship or living together or going into marriage, for example, what kind of conversations do you think they should be having before making that decision?
Oh, wow. That is a good question. I think just being really honest about what you want. So definitely thinking back, I don't think either of us were, it was our wedding anniversary actually on the weekend. Okay. And I posted on social media and I said it hasn't been a smooth journey by any means, but the best journeys never are. And we've both had to do a lot of work on ourselves, and individually and together. So I think the more you can know yourself, looking back, if I'd have done all of this work on myself back then, but you can't do that, can you? But that is what I would say to people, is really connecting with yourself, like what makes you happy. And when you can make yourself happy and be really comfortable in your own skin, in your own company, then a relationship is going to be so much easier. So learn about codependency. I don't know if that's anything that you know about, but codependency is such an important topic. So when we're growing up, we learn to be codependent on our parents. Basically, codependency means that we put other people's feelings and emotions above our own. And that is just what happens when you're growing up, because your parents praise you and you learn what behaviours they like and what they don't. And then that continues into school. But the thing is that most of us then continue that into our adult life, and that's where it becomes a problem, because we look to other people to complete us and give us praise and make us happy. And that's where a lot of people in adult relationships do have challenges. So that would be my biggest tip: connecting with yourself and really check out codependency and see how you can start to unlearn this process.
Something that you said there, in terms of learning about each other, because even though we knew each other we were friends for 7 years before we decided to get married. And then we got married. So that was at 27. So now when you say 27, that sounds really young. But I felt, when you felt ready, and then I felt ready, I felt okay. You know, I don't mind it. Not 100%, but it was like, yeah, it's okay. I don't mind stepping down this path. And the truth for me was, you don't know someone till you live with them. And that was a real eye-opener, right? So I'd lived at home with my mom, a typical Asian boy. Everything was done for me. And then moving into my home with my wife the day we got married, and she's very headstrong. She comes from a headstrong mum, and it was, wow, you know, it was like Clash of the Titans, right? So, and it took a good 10 years of both of us being in our own lanes, slowly moving together, because it wasn't easy. I just set up a new business and had another business at the time we got married. So there's lots and lots going on. She got it, but it was a case of, well, where do I fit into all this? And you're continuing in all the ways that you want to continue, but where do I fit into this, right? And the key word for me has always been compromise, you know, learn to compromise, because I didn't know how to compromise that well at that time, right? And it's
communication.
Yeah, of course. And it's only been the last probably 4 or 5 years of a 16-year marriage that I would say we're in the same lane, you know. All that time it's sort of been getting there. And one thing you said which resonated with me deeply was that I've never said I have another half. I am whole, she is whole, and it's two whole people working together, right? She doesn't create half of me, I don't create half of her. We're two strong, independent people which work together, and it works really well. Like I said, only when you know yourself and when your opinion of yourself is quite high, and then you accept this person into your life to be your partner, to give you help and choices and decisions you make together, because you believe in each other. And that has given us the strength to raise our kids as well. And hopefully, you know, we're not perfect. We still have times we bicker and things like that, but we know we're on the same trajectory now, and it works really well. And for me, the word was compromise, because without that, it's just two people just head-butting their long way. And I think also sometimes you just have to work through things, right? Don't always say that's it. We've had an argument and that's it. I don't want to be together. Yeah. Because if that was the case, you know, I'm sure you know, Steph, right?
Yeah.
If that was the case, that would have finished years and years ago, right?
Yeah.
And now I look back and I'm so glad that we went through that hardship and that fight, that we said, no, this is worth it somehow. This is worth it. Because looking back now, and I'm like, this is the best thing. Just work it out. Just go through it and say, actually, it was worth it. There was no abuse, physical or mental. It was just two individual people just trying to work shit out, right?
Yeah.
And
it's
when
such
you
an important story. Like when you were saying it, you know, how many people have thrown in the towel during those 10 years? And I think it's the same with business. When I speak to people say, how did you know you were going to be successful? And I'm like, I just knew that I would be. And you have to believe to a point of craziness where people are thinking like, why are you continuing on with this? Because you have to believe and work so hard before you get the results. And I think that's the same with a relationship. You know, if you do feel that you have got that connection and it's worth working for, I think all of us look on TV or social media and we've seen these dream relationships or dream businesses where people are overnight successes. That isn't real, and you have to commit. When I said about making a choice, you choose again and again and again. I think that's the same as a relationship, a marriage. And you have to keep choosing and saying, yes, this is worth working out. And I look back at myself and my husband, and there's been many times that we've had very difficult times, but by having that communication and just dropping your guard, I think when you've got a lot of unresolved trauma, when I talk about trauma, either with a capital T or a small t, trauma is any time you abandon your authentic self. When you have that, I think it's very difficult to have a conversation without getting defensive. So when I look back at our past arguments, when we hadn't done this healing work, we would immediately be on the defensive and not interested in hearing what the other person had to say. And as we have gone through this process separately and together, we're much more likely to be able to we still have crosswords, but we're much quicker at taking a step back and being like, you know what, yeah, X, Y, and Z or whatever, rather than before it would have been heels in the ground, no way am I admitting that I'm wrong. And that's that compromise, isn't it?
And like I said, I think it's good to have disagreements, because it just shows that you're both passionate about something, right? But it's how quickly you can let go of it, right? Yeah. Once it's done, it's done. I've said my piece, let's just move on. And as I think, like you said, when you're younger, you hold on to it longer, and you're trying to be right, because it's important that you stand your ground, and you like you said, you put your heels in the grass and say, that's it, I'm not moving. But you realize that's not important anymore. What's important is I've had my say, I've said my piece, you get it, that's it. Let's just move on. Let's sit down again and watch TV or whatever it is you do. Right? But it is, isn't it? Because that ability to let go, rather than the ego dictating that I have to be right, it's not about being right. It's just about saying, this is what I believe. And then it's having the ability to listen as well, isn't it? So if you feel that you've been valid in your explanation, they come across with a different point of view, like, actually, do you know what, I actually agree with that. It's having the humility to say, actually, do you know what, you could be right there. I'm going to listen to that, and that's fine, without feeling like your ego has been damaged or hurt, because it's not real, is it?
And something I always say to my husband is, we're on the same team. Like, we're on the same team. We're not enemies. We are on the same team. We might not have the same viewpoint. We might not feel like it, but we are on the same team. So we need to work it out. Like you say, otherwise, every single time you're then like, well, what, you're going to call in the towel every time you don't agree? Like, you have to be able to have these difficult conversations to then, there's so much to talk about, isn't there? Business, kids, life. There's so much you have to be able to talk about those things.
Yeah. So when you're not working, what kind of things do you enjoy?
We live in Yorkshire, so we are on the Yorkshire moors, which is lovely. And we've really enjoyed, particularly during lockdown, just finding new walks around where we live. Because we have got the children at home, we are outside quite a lot anyway. But lockdown really did make us see that there are some really lovely walks where we are. We don't have to travel. I think we all get caught up in that thing of it's a weekend, we need to go off. And because of lockdown, it's like, we can't do that. And we've really enjoyed spending time at home, just seeing friends and family, really, I'm from Nottingham, so we're going to go over to Nottingham this weekend and see people that we've not seen since, Christmas. So that'll be really nice.
And you mentioned Yorkshire there. So my wife's from Yorkshire, so she's from Leeds. Yeah. So we do go up quite a bit, and I'm from Leicester, obviously. So we've still got a similar there, sort of Nottingham, Leicester, Yorkshire, what's going on, right? And it is, I think, Yorkshire, what I found, so I went to university in Leeds, and what I found is the genuine friendliness of people. It's just mind-blowing. I never actually knew that, because I come from Leicester, so Leicester is more or less like a normal city. It's okay if you say that. But going up to Leeds, I was in awe of the genuine warmth of people in Yorkshire, and you know that anyway. But just being around that, it just makes you warmer, and it makes you kinder, because you have that kind of environment around you, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So you help females with the way they think and helping their surroundings. What's the importance of the people that surround them?
Oh, everything, absolutely everything. Particularly when you're taking a path that isn't well trodden. So, when I speak to people about home education or business or doing something different with their life, it's so important to be around people who just understand and will support you. And often when I'm working with my ladies, the same journey that I've had to be on, the hardest people to hear from are your friends and family. Like, it's built into our DNA that we care what the people we love think about us, because back in the day when we were out on the fields, we had to be in tribes and we had to be protected and part of the community, and if we didn't, we'd have died. So it's part of our subconscious, it's part of our DNA. When we are doing things that our friends and family don't agree with or don't understand, that really cuts to the core of who we are. Like, it's so hard. So being around people either online or in real life that understand your journey, and well-meaning friends and family, they're quick, I think, to be like, oh, we've tried that, just get a normal job, or just put the kids in school, all that kind of thing. And having people who trust your vision and trust you, that you know your life, that's what it's all about. It's about knowing what's right for you, and then having a support system around you that's going to keep pushing you forward for the times when you are getting tired or disheartened. So yeah, it's everything. Having that support system is so important.
And if there's because what I found is conversations like these that we're having right now, to me, are fairly normal with a lot of the people around me, because this is what I've chosen. I have a lot of a friendship circle and a family circle, which allows me to be open and live the way that I choose to live, right? But to a lot of people, these conversations are alien because they don't have people around them. They don't hear these kind of things. You and I are only probably 1 degree removed from their life, right? But we've chosen to shape our environment and shape our life to what serves us, to make us strong, right? So if people are living in a space or a life which is holding them down, is putting them into the box of fear and shutting that lid on them and not allowing them to escape because people are telling them they're not worth it, or telling them that they'll never achieve anything, or why they're thinking of that's what other people do, not what we do, right? That whole sort of community. How would you recommend people break out of that to allow them to see the opportunities for everyone, not just for certain people?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things that I'd like to say. Firstly, I think everybody has to go through that journey. So I think it's really easy to look at other people and think, well, it's okay for them because their family probably supported them. Like, I think we often fantasize and think, oh, well, their relationship looks amazing, so they must have a really supportive partner, or, they maybe had a bit of money to set them up, all these things. So all the people that I've met during this journey, they've all had a similar story like that. Like, it hasn't been easy for any of them. And I think that's helpful to know that you have to go through you have to step into who you really are and let go of those stories that people have about you. Because until you drop caring what friends and family think about you, you won't step into who you're meant to be. That doesn't mean you don't love them, doesn't mean you don't respect them, but you have to stop letting their opinion of you and your decisions stop holding you back. And until you do that, you won't move forward, or you will, but not at the pace that you would want to. So you have to really that's where the inner work comes in, and tuning in with your heart and really strengthening. Because if you don't know where you want to go, how can you expect other people to support you? And this is a story that I tell a lot in my group and in my movement. But there was a period of time when I was really frustrated with my husband, like so frustrated with him. And he came home from work. He'd been traveling out of the country. He came home, and I'd obviously had the kids all day, and he came and he's like, I'm just going to, hi, how you doing? Nice, friendly, whatever. I'm just going to go for a walk. And he went for a walk, and I rang my friend, and I'm like, it's just literally got to be done. And he's gone off for a walk. I was furious. And she's like, why don't you go for a walk? When he comes back, why don't you go? And I was like, literally never considered that I could just do that. It's crazy now. Like, why was I so angry? But I'd created, it wasn't even necessarily a box people had created for me. It was one I created for myself.
Yeah.
Because of course, if I had said to my husband, I'm going to go for a walk as well, of course he'd have said, yeah, that's fine. But I had created this box where I didn't feel I could say I wanted to go for a walk. My favorite quote of all time is, fear is the prison of the heart. And I saw it in Australia when I was a lot younger, and it just stuck with me. And I just see how we create these prisons for ourselves all the time based upon our fears of what other people are going to think of us. And I'm always honest with people, like, there probably will be times when you'll have to have difficult conversations with friends and family. Like, there probably will be, and people will pass judgment. But are you going to let that stop you from living your dream? And my mum died when I was young, and I think that's been a real driver for me. It's like, I don't want to be on my deathbed and think, I wish I'd done whatever, or if only I'd been more brave. And that's what I try and tell people is, like, only you, this is your one life, your one chance. People are going to talk about you anyway. You might as well live the life that you want to live. And if you spend your whole life trying to please everybody, there'll always be somebody who's unhappy, and more importantly, you will be deeply unhappy. So putting yourself first and really tuning in with what makes you happy and what life you want to live, that has to be the first thing that you do.
And talking about reaching the end of your life, you talked about, not living in regret and not living in fear and living a life that you've chosen to live in the way you want to live it. So what things right now to there, so if we project forward, what things that are still yet to happen, experience yet to have for you, so that you can look back and say, that was the life I led?
Well, Costa Rica has been on my to-do list for a while, and it's my 40th birthday this year. So
Perfect.
We're going to Costa Rica in January, which I'm really excited about. So 6 weeks. So you're starting that process of the traveling. I'm really looking forward to that. So that's on a personal level. And then professionally, I want to write a book. Something that I started looking into. And just really spreading the story. So we haven't touched on it yet, but I teach love and quantum science with business strategies. So quantum science, I really want to bring that to the mainstream and make it accessible. So for people who, I don't like the term woo, because I think it really undermines the power of our minds and our body. The quantum science for me is really about getting in tune with and understanding our physical makeup and the makeup of the world, and then using that, because we're creating our world all the time. You can either choose to create it as it is today, again and again and again, or you can choose to create it to be the life that you want it to be. So that's my mission, is helping people to see that they can build a business and life that they love, that really works for them, by using the power of quantum science. So helping people to see that they are fully in control of where their life goes from now.
And quantum energy is something I find absolutely fascinating. It's mind-blowing, the amount of studies I've read on it. There's the recent book I read was Dr. Joe Dispenza, the Supernatural Mind, and that blew me away. And doing some of his meditations in the morning, about putting your attention on all your sort of energy centers and all your energy chakras, and seeing how, at some points, I really felt like I was actually not in this body anymore. It was sort of like, expanded to a point where I'm bigger than the universe at some point, bigger than the planet. And it felt real. And it was like, I realized then our attention has energy, and our attention, what we put our mind onto, really does throw out a frequency that draws upon what is equal to that frequency, right? So like I said, a lot of people live their lives in what they don't want as opposed to what they want, right? And if what you don't want, all that will happen is you keep attracting the same things, right? And if you're then very conscious about what you do want, even if you don't, it's not our job to work out how it's going to be possible, right? It's our job to just say, that's what is possible, and this is how I want my life to be. And unless you're clear, and unless you realize that it's not my job to work it out, it's just my job to be open, and the opportunities will arise. And those opportunities have probably risen in the past, but because our brain and our receptors were not onto it, we never noticed it. Like the red car which we bought, which we thought no one else had a red car, until you open your eyes and you realize everyone's got a red car, but you just never noticed it. It's the same, it's the same analogy, and it's so true, and I love it that you have taken this as part of your life and trying to show people that this is the way forward, because I do believe the science of it. And like you said, when you, whatever you want to call it woo, you want to call it science, you want to call it whatever it is real. And I'm a living embodiment of that, because everything that I've put my attention on has happened. I don't put attention on the plan. It's more a case of I will keep moving in that direction. I don't know actually when it's going to happen, but it will, right? And I'm sure you've done that as well. So is there any situations when certain things have opened up for you which you're like, that wasn't even in the plan, but I put my attention on it, but it's happened?
I think the whole of this year really has just been a exercise in that. And I think you're really right that you can't know the how. So when we think about the how, we use our conscious brain, which is just 4%, and the subconscious is like 96%. When we think too much about the how, I think, and I know for myself, that's when you get bogged down in action. And you really limit yourself, because how can we possibly know the how? Like, we can't. Our how's really tiny if we're just using that 4%. So let the subconscious work out the how, and just focus on where you want to go. So give the subconscious clues about where you're heading, and then it will fall into place. But yeah, at the start of the year, I was doing, I did 3 workshops in my local area. So I set up a networking group for women, because there wasn't one where I lived. And I was doing these workshops. I think they were £30 per person, and I was struggling to fill them. I filled the first one with 10 people, which I was so happy about. And the second one, I only got 5 people. But even then, I was stood up and I was saying, look, because I said to them, I've only got 5 people this time. Does that mean that I'm crap? No, it doesn't. It just means I need to learn from it and keep going. Like, you only fail if you stop. So even those conversations I was having, like, I knew that it was going to get momentum. And then I invested in a coach, which was the best investment that I could have done, because I knew that I could change people's lives. Like, I really knew that I could, because I knew my techniques worked. But I couldn't see how I could go from charging £30 to charging more money and reaching the people that I wanted to reach. That's like you say, the how. I was just too stuck on the how. I was like, but how? How am I going to do that? And my coach really helped me with opening myself up to, you just keep doing the work, and it will come in. And the belief that people would pay me more money, because I still, money stories, I think, is a massive issue for a lot of people. And you mentioned about, why do I work with women? Women then have even more money stories than men. So unraveling all of that, and we tie up so much of our worth, and whether we should be worth money and whether we shouldn't, and whether we even want money, and there's all these things. So just that really deep trust and intention, really focusing my intention on the fact that I was going to have a successful launch, which is what I did in June. And then, bringing in one-to-one clients, which I've done. I'm fully booked now. So just having that belief and taking what's the next step? That's what you need to focus on. Like, tuning into your heart, and then thinking, right, what feels good? How can I serve the people I want to at the highest level? What works for me and my family? And then just take that step forward. And then before you know it, another step opens up, and you're like, oh yeah, and you couldn't even see it when you were one step behind. So just making that progress each time.
I think one thing that I suffer with, or I won't say suffer, but I find challenging, is overwhelm. Being quite a ideas focused person, so I come up with a lot of ideas, and for me it's a case of actually honing down. So before, if you met me 10 years ago, I'd have 5 ideas a day, and I'd start on all of them, and then none of them they wouldn't actually progress to anything, because then I'd have another 5 ideas that I start working on, right? So I never see stuff through. So one thing that's helped me, being in a situation of crisis and working on myself and working through my own traumas and getting through those, was pick off the things that you can move with, and then just concentrate on them for a little bit of time and see how it goes. Now, the anxiety, the overwhelm that I probably suffer with is seeing too many things. So I see, okay, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do this. And then I start thinking, okay, so I'll manage it, and and then it gets to a point where it feels like it's too much. And then I think, so what do I need to let go of? How do I manage what I need to let go of? Or what do I trust myself to say, actually, slow down on this, or there's plenty of time. If one of your clients said the similar thing to you, what kind of advice would you give them?
I think a lot of it would depend on their goals. So if you've got a goal which is financial, then we would do work around, well, what's the easiest way to get that money in the shortest amount of time? And still doing something that you love, so still being really connected, because that's really important. But if you've then got a passion project, it could be, I'd really love to do this, but realistically, is anyone going to pay me any money to do this? No. So that's a passion project. That's not going to be part of my business. So really help them to have something called the, what do I call it? Something triangle. So it's profit, passion, and purpose. And you bring it together, and it really helped you to see, well, where do those things overlap, so that I can earn money from the things that I love. But there will be things that you love that they're not there to earn you money. And it's about wading through all of that, particularly when you're multi-passionate. and just really seeing, well, what is my goal? Now, if your goal is to really positively impact a group of people that need your help, and you don't have to have any financial tie-in with that, then absolutely do that if you don't need to earn the money. But it's just really about working. It always comes back to self. What is your short-term goal? And I really think 90-day goals are brilliant for that, because a year can seem so far away. When we bring it back down to 90 days, it's like you said, okay, what am I going to focus on for this short period of time? Not forever, just for now, make sure that I'm making, because I think so many, our attention span, I heard the other day, is only 8 seconds. Like, our attention span is so short these days. I know that's crazy, isn't it? So I think often we can give up on something when we haven't actually given it enough time. Like we said about the relationships, really investing into something and keeping going and just following it through and just seeing what happens. And then after 90 days, you might think, yes, this is for me, or no, it's not. And then you can move on to the other thing. But you probably have had another 10 ideas by then.
Yeah. Right. So before we sort of head to the end of the conversation, there's one thing, because I love the way you project, the way you put things into words, because it makes sense. And it's useful and helpful for a lot of people, not just for sort of individual people. Now, you advise on people in terms of if they're stuck or they want to try and move forward or they're trying to get somewhere, right? What's the thing that's holding you back from your greatness?
Oh, that's a good question. It really is your shadow self. So really, if you haven't heard of shadow work before, it's about embracing all parts of yourself.
Okay.
So when we, as we're growing up, we have parts of ourselves that we hide away that aren't acceptable. And, we learn to hide them away. And the more that you can bring your shadow self to the surface, the more you are authentically you. So it is around that shadow work. I think that's where, and have you heard the phrase like new level, old devil? It's like you do the work and then you're like, yay! And then you go up to a new level. It's like, oh, okay, need to go back through all that again.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a continuous process. It's a continuous reflection, evaluation, looking at what feels good, what doesn't, and then doing more of the work and seeing what comes up. Because as we do reach new levels of success or financial income or whatever it is in our life, there will be new challenges that come up, and then we need to go back and do the work internally to then release and then move on. Release and expansion is something I speak about a lot. So releasing the old things to allow expansion into the new things. And if you think of it like that, when you're feeling stuck, when you're procrastinating, when you're feeling overwhelmed, it's about taking that breath, making the body feel safe, and then just thinking, right, what am I scared of? Like, what's holding me back? Why don't I want to do this? And then when you bring that to your conscious mind, then you can start working forwards.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. It's like holding a backpack with too many things in it, right? And you're sort of drudging along life trying to, but just stop, open that bag, take some stuff out, and actually start enjoying the journey again, right? Because it is just a journey, isn't it? Our whole life is a journey. No matter what we believe that this goal is going to make us happy, it won't. It's the person you become on the way, right? And when we get to that mountaintop, we'll see the next mountaintop. Because that's us as human beings, right? We're just going to carry on. I see the mountaintop just before I even get to that mountaintop. I see the next one already. So I think I need to learn that where, when you have gratitude about achieving something and celebrating, taking time out to celebrate, because I know it's so important, but I think when we're these entrepreneurs usually are ambitious, and you have to have that level of self-motivation, so we do tend to have that in us. But just taking at least even just a little celebration. Just before you delete it off your Google Calendar, just say yes. Before I delete it, thank you, done. And it's funny because even this morning I think so I'll normally get up around sort of 5:30, 6, and then by 9 o'clock when the other people are getting up, I'm like, I've already done like 6 things, and that's like some people's whole day, and I'm like, I've done those bits, and now what's next? Rather than thinking, actually, I could actually take the rest of the day off because I've actually done so much already. But when you're used to being in motion and action, it's retraining that muscle, isn't it? That muscle in your brain to say, actually, you're not a human doing, you're a human being. Somehow you just have to give yourself a break, right?
Even that's why I love that connection is currency. So for people that struggle with that,
yeah,
the connection is currency, because I say to them, the more you connect with yourself, the more you're going to do whatever you want to do. So when we're in doing, we're actually hindering ourselves. And it's flipping that switch to think, okay, the more I just be, the easier it's going to be. And the more I'm going to call in the things I want to do. I'm like, yes, that's it. And it's just finding that hook for, I'm that type of personality as well. So when I'm thinking, well, I need to do all these things, that's when I know I need to think, okay, you need to just be for a bit, because you're getting like het up around the thing.
And I've had to, good exercise that I found for myself is when I feel that there's too much that I've got on my plate and I'm trying to sort of juggle all the, all the balls and all that at the same time, is consciously slow down. What I mean by that is if an email normally is written quickly, consciously just write it slowly. And then get up and do the next thing consciously, slowly. And it's alien because you're working normally at, a million miles an hour. And then you realize that it doesn't even actually take that long normally. But because you've consciously slowed down, you've appreciated what you've done. You've then said, actually, I'll move on to the next thing, and you're concentrating on that rather than saying, okay, now I've done this. I've got 6 other things that I'm just going to quickly work on in my head while I'm doing this. And it's not a great place to be mentally as well, right?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Mental health is not a good place to be, but because you're so used to doing it that way, it's almost retraining yourself to say, no, slow down, bro. So as we reach end of conversation, Steph, thank you for the time you've given me already. I love conversations like this because like you said, it just throws out good energy between us. And I'm sure we're going to do this again on different things. And when we focus on new things, I'll get you involved as well. So I'm sure you'll be a part of that. But just a couple more questions before we go. Just so people get to know you a little bit more and what's important to you, right? So we've reached the end of your days. We were talking about that earlier, but we've reached the end of your days and you've done everything you want to do. You've had the impact in the world that you believe is possible. You're 175 years old, so your health goals have been reached and, you're sitting or you're lying down and you don't have enough energy to speak, but you've got a pen and a paper and you're left to write 3 words. Those 3 words resonate with you. They've helped you all your life, and you hopefully, people listening will take those 3 words and try and practice them to help them in their life. For you, what would those 3 words be?
This is so easy for me. I have 3 words that I live by. So that's love, joy, and trust.
Perfect. And if you could go into each one a little bit as well. Yeah.
So love, when you love yourself, everything comes from you. Like when you really deeply love yourself, everything falls into place. So loving yourself from that point, and then that love goes out into the world. So love had to be my number 1 because it's everything that I do and teach. And then joy, like you said, taking joy in every small thing. Like life isn't made up of all these big, we have these big moments to remember, but actually it's all the little things. And if you can find joy in writing the email or tidying up your kids' toys or all those things, that is when you'll have a happy life. So finding that joy. And then the trust, trusting that you are always provided for, that you're always supported. Because when you trust and know that you're always loved and provided for, you will make so many different decisions to when you're coming from a place of scarcity and fear. So really trusting in and believing in that.
Love that. Something you mentioned just there about scarcity and finance and money, because money is just an energy, just like love is an energy, whatever it is, it's an energy. If we see that like that, the abundance occurs when we're abundant and we have space for abundance, right? And what I found with all the energies and money being the most prevalent was someone used the analogy of oxygen. If we're underwater and we have no breathing apparatus and we're trying to find air, we're swimming and we're panicking and all we're seeing is, okay, where's the next breath going to come from? And that's like when we have a lack of money. All we're doing is just making real bad decisions, just trying to gasp for air. But if someone then threw a tank on you, put that oxygen mask in your mouth, you'll actually start seeing the whole pool. You start enjoying the swim and you'll get to the edges and you'll make the right decisions for you as a person. And that's what I found. When money is like oxygen to us, it allows us to breathe. It gives us space to think and not make rash, harsh decisions, which we would if we were panicking because we're in survival mode. We're in a mode where what's good for me, we can let go of the things that don't serve us and we can serve our best because we're not in a panic or stressful situation, right? So therefore, it's important that we attract the right amount of energy, not use it in a way where we love it, but we use it as a tool to allow us to give service to the world in the best way possible for us and the people around us, right?
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you pointed that out, because it reminded me of that sort of analogy. Right. So the last question now is, this podcast is called Bigger Than the Hustle, and right now you're bigger than the world. So we've plugged you into 7.58 billion people on this planet. They can all hear you. They're all listening. There's no language barrier, and they're all awake. I can afford you 30 seconds to share a message with the world. What would your message be?
So the message that I would love to share is that you are the universe, like everything comes from you. And when you can really look deep into yourself, that's where all the answers are. And the more you connect with yourself, the happier you will be, and the greater the life that you will live. So letting go of that fear, loving, trusting, finding the joy, and just, all the answers are there. When you can take that time and connect with yourself, you'll find what you're looking for.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Steph. Thank you so much for your time. The conversation we've just had, like I said, it always fills me up with energy, and it creates a buzz to make me want to do this more and share our words. And I hope and pray the words that we've shared today reach the people it needs to reach in the world, and it sort of helps them a little bit easier on their journey in life. Because like I said, we're all trying to still figure it out, and we'll continue to figure out. We're all on our own struggles, and we can make that struggle a little bit easier, so life becomes a little bit brighter for the people around us, right? Thank you for turning up in the world the way you do. I've seen a lot of your posts, and I see the way you come out. And I like that, because even though you know yourself, neither of us have worked anything else, but we know we've reached a little bit of a point where we can share. We're not scared to share. We're not scared of the opinions of people, because we know it's more important to push ourselves out of our comfort zone to be the best we can for the people around us, right? So thank you so much. Just before we go, if people that are listening that want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
I have a Facebook page, which is Steph Heald, and my movement is the Extraordinary Business Evolution, which is a group for female entrepreneurs. So they're probably the best ways for the moment.
Perfect. And what I'll do is I'll hook those details up on the show notes. So we'll be on YouTube, we'll be on all the podcast options. So if you look in the show notes, you'll see the information of Steph's. And if you do want to connect with her, please do, because it's really important to surround yourself with people like Steph, because she's sharing a message with the world. She's throwing out good energy. And if we can envelope ourselves in that energy, we can only become strong for not just ourselves, but the people around us who are important to us, right? So thank you so much. I know we'll do this again, Steph.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, and in by this year, I'll be opening up a studio as well, where I want to do this face to face. So again, I'll invite you along. If you're ever down Nottingham sides, you can come over to Leicester. It's not that far, and we can have another face to face conversation and try and share a little bit more of our journey.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. Thank you.
No worries at all. Okay, so guys, this was Bigger Than the Hustle podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully we shared a few messages with you. Hopefully it helped you a little bit and made your life, a little bit brighter because you listened. Just before we go, big energy leads to big thoughts. Big thoughts lead to big ideas. Big ideas lead to big actions. Big actions lead to a big life. So keep thinking big. Until next week, thanks for tuning in, and goodbye.